So I know it's been a while since I dropped a podcast episode, about maybe 8 weeks to be exact. And towards the end of 2024, I did take an intentional break. I took an intentional break to rest, to reassess, as well as restructure. Um, I don't want to get into too much detail about it on today's episode. However, I did feel the need and responsibility to let those who tune in and listen to me know that around September, late September, beginning of October, I found myself feeling really drained. I did. I found myself feeling so drained. Your girl was tired. Okay. And this was just beyond a physical tired. Okay. I was mentally tired. I was emotionally exhausted. And the things that I typically do on a daily basis. So my routine, I normally get up at 4:30 in the morning. Easily. 4:30. I've been doing that for a very long time. I get up, I sit with God, I work out. Like that's my routine. That's my normal. But even doing that was exhausting to do, right? It was really draining to do. It felt like a daunting task to do. And so in that intentional break, yes, rest was in order for sure. However, what was also equally important was for me to reassess and restructure my season. Okay, that was huge. That was necessary for me because naturally I am considered to be a high performing individual. I mean, that's just been a part of me. That's something that I've always been. And one of the things about acknowledging the things that you do well, like anything that you are strong in, you also have blind spots in, right? This is what I tell my clients. This is what I tell people. I mean, shoot, I got to tell myself this, right? And one of the things that I learned about this being a part of me was that I can push myself too hard. I can do that easily. I can overly extend my schedule because I can just be very ambitious. I can overcommit at times. And what that can do is that it can cause me to take on more than I should and not always being as mindful on when I need to take a step back. Okay. And so this step back that I had to take towards the end of 2024, it wasn't just about resting. It was also about listening to my body. Okay. Your body will always tell you what's going on, especially when you start to get more in tune with it and really understand your body on a deeper level. There was a time where I was not as tuned as I am now. I remember back in 2012 when I had my first panic attack. I had never had a panic attack before. It was at my daughter's school. She was 4 years old at the time and she was in ballet. And so, I had one there. That was my first experience, and I had multiple panic attacks. However, during that time, I wasn't on this path of growth. I did not have the tools. I did not have the resources. Back then, I wasn't necessarily thinking that that's what I needed to do, right? That was the headspace that I was in at the time. When I also took the step back, it also allowed me space to get clear on a couple of things. And one of those things, and some of those questions that I asked myself was, where am I right now? Okay. What am I doing? Where do I desire to go? Is what I'm currently doing in alignment with where I desire to go? What do I need to let go of to get there in this season? And what do I need to do or do more of to ensure that I'm moving in that direction? This step back also allowed me to be reminded on what I value and realign my actions to those values. Because here's the thing, you can be doing things that are probably considered great or maybe even good opportunities, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they align. Okay. And so it was important for me to do those things for myself. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm just 100% in terms of my energy and my usual. However, I will say that I am much grounded and focused than I was 8 weeks ago. And for that, I am grateful. And so I felt the need to fill you all in because I think it just makes us more relatable as people. My goal above all else on this podcast is to never vent or vomit on my audience about my problems, my struggles, my challenges. I would never do that. However, what I do want to do is just bring some relatability, right? Because I always tell people I get it. You know, I may not have been through everything you've been through, but I understand the challenges and struggles of things because as people, we all go through it, right? The climate that we live in, social media is such a huge part of that climate. And it can really paint a very false and narrow picture of people's lives, thinking that everyone's perfect, no one's having problems, right? No one's having the issues, and you can feel like you're on this island on your own. But I'm gonna tell you something, we all got our struggles. We do, myself included. Doesn't matter if I'm a coach. It doesn't matter if I get on on this podcast. It does not matter. I have my challenges. It's just the facts. And I think we owe it to ourselves to be honest in that regard and be intentional on doing what's necessary to ensure that we're moving forward in our lives. Okay. And so, speaking of moving forward, I want to first say Happy New Year. Okay. Happy 2025 to each and every one of you. I know this is kind of like mid January, and I'm just talking about Happy New Year, but I have the tendency to do that, right? And for those who are tuning in today and listening right now at this present moment, my hope for you this year, okay, my hope for you in 2025 is that you give yourself permission, okay? That's it. That's what I want you to do. I want you to give yourself permission. And when I refer to permission, I'm referring to the kind of permission that is very unapologetic. Okay. Very, very unapologetic. And I know we hear that word unapologetic. Just be unapologetic. And it sounds so motivating and inspiring because it is, right? You get in that energy like, yeah, that's what I need to do. However, here's the thing. Giving yourself permission to show up in that way is an action, meaning that there's something that you have to do less of, and there's something that you have to do more of to experience this form of freedom over you. Okay. Because when someone experiences divorce, okay, or you had a relationship that really mattered to you that had to end, it can create things like hesitation. It can create doubt. It can create fear. It can create this untrue belief of not being enough and that you're not worthy. And it can also create this false sense of safety where you find yourself avoid making bold and better decisions. So you'll rather deal with what's familiar rather than unfamiliar, even though familiar isn't bold or even better. And so what happens is when you move like this, you're restricting yourself. Okay. You're placing these limiting conditions over what's possible for your next chapter. It's like you've created these boundaries around your own potential. And when that becomes your default way of moving and shaking in your life, your ability to be unapologetic in your choices as well as your actions are very controlled. And I'm not referring to the kind of control that represents healthy discipline or deliberate decision making. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the form of control that's driven by fear, by doubt, and even external things like people or even current circumstances that causes you to limit yourself from the possibilities that this year can birth and bring for you. And so what this means is that whatever it is that's standing in the way of you giving yourself the permission to become unapologetic about embracing your next chapter, it needs to be acknowledged as well as released. So in other words, I need you to ask yourself these 3 questions. The first question I want you to ask is, what's standing in my way right now? I want you to ask yourself, what's standing in my way right now? And I want you to acknowledge what that is, right? Because as I tell people, you want to give yourself the gift of being honest. So remember when I told you all I had to take an intentional break to rest, reassess, and restructure? I had to give myself the gift of being honest with me about what's standing in my way right now. I had to. And after you acknowledge what's standing in your way, I want you to say to yourself, I'm giving myself permission to not do that this year, okay? That's what I want you to say. And then I want you to think about, what action can I take that will honor what I want to release? Okay. Because remember, giving yourself permission to show up in this way is an action, it's a strategy. If you're here, most likely you're either thinking about a divorce, going through one, you're already divorced, or even transitioning out of a non marital relationship. However, no matter where you are on the spectrum of that journey, one of the biggest misconceptions is how disruptive this experience can be. And here's the thing, even if it was the best choice, it doesn't mean that it hurts less. And you don't have to pretend to be okay. Neither do you have to be strong about what you're going through, because the truth of the matter is that it impacts you. It can impact you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, legally, relationally, and even professionally. And because of that, it is crucial to act accordingly. And so, what does this mean? This means that it is very important for you to be intentional about your next chapter going forward. And a huge part of that is recovering on purpose. And to help with that, I created a free audio guide that outlines 7 healthy ways to help you through this transition. And to access your free copy of that audio guide, then please head over to my website, tanyacarter.com/turning the page. Okay, that's tanyacarter.com/turning the page. And I will put a link down in the show notes. And so what I want to do is that I want to give you guys about 7 to 8 examples on what standing in your way can look like for you. Okay. Standing in your way can look like holding back. Okay. It can look like you're withholding. One of the things that I stated earlier was that we can be in this false safety because it's what we know. It may not be what's better. It may not be what's best. However, it's familiar. And familiarity can cause us to hold back from what we really do desire next for our lives. Standing in your way can look like hiding or shrinking yourself. One of my dear friends, her name is Jasmine Womack. Okay. She helped people write their books. She helps people develop coaching programs. She's been doing this for a while. And one of the things that she said years ago, and she still says it to this day, is that I will no longer be the best kept secret. That's what she said. She said, I would no longer become the best kept secret when it came to her business. And what I took away from that was that there was another level or levels, right, that she needed to give herself the unapologetic permission to reach in her business. Now, maybe it's not a business for you. However, there may be an area in your life or several areas in your life where you really could be dimming your light because you don't want to come across as too much. You don't want to be seen as extra. You don't want to be team doing the absolute most, right? And so what you do is that you shrink, you hide, you play small and you attempt to fit in because maybe you just want other people to feel comfortable. Okay. Another thing that could be standing in your way is living in emotions such as regret, guilt, fear, doubt, embarrassment, or even shame. The ending of relationships can really create unpleasant emotions such as these. It can. It can cause you to remain a prisoner of your past. It can cause you to question your decisions going forward. It can cause you to feel like you failed. It can keep you in this endless loop of self-blame to even thinking that you are just not worthy or even deserving of a fresh start in your life. And what this does is that it will control you. It will control your present and it will also control the possibilities of what could be for you. Standing in your way can also look like being overly concerned about what other people think of you. I actually talked about this in one of my podcast episode number 173, titled Letting Go of Others' Opinions, 6 Questions to Break Free and Live Your Life After Divorce. And I'll put the link down for that episode in the show notes. And the reason why I had to bring this up is because when it comes to divorce, judgment tends to follow suit. That's just what it is. And this judgment can come from friends. It can come from family. It can come from social media. It can even come from religious or cultural practices that may have certain expectations. And one of the things that I talked about in the podcast episode that I just mentioned was that there were two truths when it comes to other people's opinions. Okay. The first truth is that people will judge you, and people judging you is unavoidable. You cannot avoid people judging you. All right. The second truth is that even in their judgment, you don't have to accept their judgments as truth. Their judgment is not law, right? That's their truth from their lens, from their perspective, from their own understanding, not yours. And so when you give a person's opinion that kind of authority and significance over you, it will unconsciously control you as well as dictate your decisions and direction. Okay. And so maybe other people's opinions could be what's standing in your way. All right. Another form of standing in your way can also look like settling. Okay. It can look like settling when you're not giving yourself the permission to show up unapologetically. Okay. You are automatically settling by default. Okay. So, in other words, it's like settling has become your lifestyle. It's become your way of life. It's how you just been doing life. You've been doing life in a sense of settling. And it's not just a romantic relationship. Okay. I'm not talking about just that, because when we talk about settling, people often associate that with only romance. And yes, that can be true. However, what I've also seen and what I've also witnessed is that settling has become a culture that many people have adopted in other areas of their lives. So you can be settling in your job, you could be settling in your career, your business. You can be settling with the salary that you are being paid for in the marketplace. I've seen it because I've worked with clients that I've had to we've had to work through that. We got to increase his salary because I've seen where people have accepted less than what they're really worth based on their skills and based on their education. You could be settling in your friendships, your health, your personal growth, to even in your boundaries. So settling becomes like a pattern. It becomes a habit. It becomes a way of life that spills and goes viral into other areas of your life. Okay, so settling can be one way. Another form can look like self-sabotage. Okay, that can be something that's standing in your way. I actually did an episode on this too. I did an episode last year, podcast episode number 164, titled, Are You Self-Sabotaging? How to Identify and 4 Steps to Break Free. And I'll put that down in the show notes as well. Because here's the thing, this concept of giving yourself this permission to show up unapologetically this year. Let me tell you something. It comes with embracing what you've never experienced before. So it comes with embracing something new. And so what happens is when you've never embraced something before that's better for you, that can trigger an emotion of fear. It can. You can be like, what's this? Like, it's new, it's unfamiliar, it's uncharted territory. And what happens is that emotion of fear results in an action of resistance. Okay. So because it's better and it's new, you can also find yourself resisting it because self-sabotage is designed to shield you from what's unfamiliar, right? Self-sabotage will convince you that where you are now is better. Where you are now is much safer, even if it means to settle. Okay. It's like a defense mechanism that really is designed to set you up to really not achieve your full potential as well as thrive in the areas that you desire the most. So in other words, self-sabotage is intended for you to react in ways that hold you back, right? It's there to cause you to not give yourself permission to show up unapologetically, okay? And so self-sabotage could be something that's in the way that's holding you back from really living unapologetically. Okay. Another form of standing in your way could look like apologizing for who you are. It can, right? Like, and I'm not referring to the kind of apology that eliminates a person taking responsibility for the impact that we have on others. like in terms of acknowledging our mistakes and shortcomings. I'm not talking about that kind of apology, right? That's not what this is about. This is about the kind of apology that devalues, disrespects, and diminishes your existence, okay? Where you're just always sorry. You're sorry about being different. You're sorry about how you laugh. You're sorry for how you talk. You're sorry for the music you like. You're sorry for how you dress, right? You're sorry for the traits and characteristics and the personality that you have. You're sorry that you have a different idea or a different opinion or a different way on doing things. It's almost just like you're just sorry for the essence of who you really are. And all this really does, when you're always in that space of an apology of being who you are, you're sending a message that there's really no room for you to be who you are in this world. That's exactly what you're doing. And that kind of message that you're sending will always prevent you from experiencing the freedom to embrace your uniqueness, to walk in your value, and own your space so that you can reach your full potential. Okay. And so you have to ask yourself, am I in my own way because I feel I'm so apologetic about who I am when I should be unapologetic about who I am? All right. And so another thing that could be standing in your way, and this is the last one that I wrote down, is that you want to keep those who can't go with you close to you. Okay. That's the last one. The last one is you want to keep those who can't go with you close to you. And when I'm talking about this, right, I'm not really talking about this cancel culture-ish world that we live in, right? Where we cancel everybody for everything. That's not necessarily what I mean here. This is about understanding that when it's your time to move, okay, everyone just can't go, right? And for some of you, knowing that brings discomfort, right? Because maybe your loyalty to them has always been at the expense of your growth and well-being. Like some of you all are just loyal to a fault, just at a fault, even if it's at the expense of your own growth. Okay. Maybe you've always been the savior and the rescuer. You've been seen and nominated and won the award of being the go-to person. Okay. And what happens is when you become that person to everybody, when you've been that person that other people depend on, their needs always takes precedence above your own desire to act on moving forward for yourself. Because for you, doing that will bring discomfort for you as well as guilt. Maybe the people you're afraid to leave behind has been there for you in your past, right? And you may feel this obligation of thinking that you actually owe them by remaining close to them, even if remaining close to them denies or delays the growth that you want to experience. Because maybe there's some internal dialogue that you're battling with that's saying, leaving them behind means that I'm abandoning them. I'm being selfish. I'm being disloyal. Leaving them means that I'm turning my back on them. Leaving them means I'm ungrateful for what they've done for me in the past. Okay. That can be something that you're battling with. Maybe these are the relationships that you know, and it doesn't even matter what the dynamic of it is. It's just familiar. And the thought of not having them as close is unsettling. And so sometimes we can just be in our own way because we're holding on to relationships to avoid being alone, being judged, or even just unsure on what life would be like without those relationships. And so those were just some examples on what standing in your way could look like for you. Okay. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to form 3 columns on this paper. Okay. And at the top of the very first column, I want you to write, what's standing in my way? I want you to write that question. What's standing in my way? The second column at the top, I want you to write, what am I giving myself permission to not do this year? Okay, that's the column. That's the column we're going to name it. What am I giving myself permission to not do this year? And the third column at the top, I want you to write, what action can I take that will honor what I want to release? Okay. That's what I want you to put in the third column. And so in that first column, I want you to list the things that's standing in your way. And so as you all see, I gave you about maybe 8 examples on what standing in your way could look like. And maybe there's something else that I didn't say that you like, this is standing in my way. I want you to write that down. So let's just say, for example, one of the things that's standing in your way is self-doubt. Let's just say that's one that could be standing in your way. We want to write that down in the first column. Okay. The second column, you're going to write something like, I give myself permission to not continuously second guess myself where it holds me back this year. Right. So based on what we wrote in the first column, which was self-doubt being the thing that's standing in our way, we are now affirming that I'm not going to do that this year. Okay. Now, the third column is, what action can I take that will honor what I want to release? Because in order to release self-doubt, in order to start detaching from being in constant self-doubt, we have to now create a new action to make that happen. And so in that column, which is the third column, you can put something on the lines of, well, I will practice affirming higher thoughts as well as seek support that will help build my confidence so that I may trust in my decisions. Okay. So I want you to do that. And you can write 1 down, you can write 10 down, you can write as many as you want. But the goal here now is to really see what's really in my way. And I want you to take some time and think of what those things are, because as we enter into a new year, we're in a new year now. We've been in a new year close to 3 weeks now. It's automatic to want something better. You know, people tend to set their goals on what they want to accomplish. However, what tends to get lost in that is asking ourselves this question: who do I need to become for this to happen? And that's an honest question. Do you need to do some heart work? The heart work, right? That inner work that I always talk about. Is that something that you need to do this year because you're dealing with some maybe unresolved emotions that are that's interfering with your growth, right? Do you need to set the boundaries? Because I'm currently boundaryless. And so therefore I'm saying yes to everything and everyone. Do you need to do some head work, like thought work, right? Because your belief system is compromised. So maybe we need to evolve our belief system, because right now our belief system needs some work. Do you need to be more teachable, more coachable, right? That's a real thing. You know, one of the things I always tell people, I was stuck in my story for 5 years. Okay. And my every year was a repeat of the same year. Okay. At the top of the year, I had goals. I had things I wanted to achieve. But one of the things that I failed to do was ask myself, who did I need to become? I needed to become someone different. I needed to evolve. I needed to develop. I needed to grow. And one of the things that I needed to do, to be full transparent, was to be teachable. I needed to be teachable. I needed to be coachable. I was very one track minded. I had my own opinion, and I never challenged those perspectives. I never allowed myself to see things objectively. I didn't allow someone to be able to teach me. So there was a level of humility that I needed to develop, right? I needed to develop that in order to be the person I needed to be to achieve the goals that I needed to achieve. And so I challenge you all to really just ask yourself, what's really standing in my way? Okay. And so that was it that I wanted to share. I wanted to kind of come in with this new year message to you. And that's really to just give yourself permission. That's my hope for you this year. My hope for you is that you step into becoming unapologetic, because it is an action. It is a journey. It's a process. It's never overnight. But imagine what will happen when you step into that space. And I have an acronym for STEP, and it stands for striving to elevate purposefully. And ask yourself, what would my life look like in a year if I strive to elevate purposely this entire year? What if I start moving what's standing in my way so that I may step into becoming unapologetic about who I am, so that I may embrace this next chapter of my life? Okay. So please make sure that you are following me on my social media handles. My Instagram is I am Tanya Carter. My Facebook, Tanya Carter. YouTube is Tanya Carter. And I will put all of those things down in the show notes. And also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you can receive notifications on when the next podcast will drop. And also leave a review. If you know that this podcast has been helpful to you on your journey after divorce, or even after a breakup, please head over to Spotify and or iTunes to leave me a review. And last but not least, share this information. If you know somebody who really needs this message of giving themselves the permission to step into becoming unapologetic this year, then please pass this information along so it may be a blessing to them. Okay. So thank you all again for tuning in with me this week. You all have a wonderful and an amazing week, and I will see you next time. Take care.